I'm George Siegel, and this is the Move the World podcast. Every week, we feature interviews with people dedicated to making the world a better place. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Move the World podcast, where every show we introduce you to people who in their lives or in their business are doing something to try to move the world. And my guest today is someone who's doing a lot of things to move the world. In fact, there's just there's a full-on list of them that we'll go through. Kerryn Vaughn is an international speaker, author, facilitator, and podcast host. And probably in a few weeks, her biggest claim to fame is she had me on her podcast as a guest, which means absolutely nothing. But thank you so much for joining me.
My absolute pleasure. No, it doesn't mean nothing. You were fantastic. What a story you've got. I absolutely love it. So I can't wait for yours to come out. And thanks for having me.
I'm excited too. Yeah. Oh, it's my pleasure. Now, it was interesting because when I was on your show, I go, wait a second, this lady's done a lot of stuff that is pretty interesting. So if somebody just asked you in your little elevator pitch here and said, Kerryn, tell me what you do to move the world, which one of these things would you start with? What would you say is your thing that keeps you going, that you make a difference in on a daily basis?
Yeah, I think I'd have to go with get off the bench, only because it's a way that I can get to groups of people and inspire them, to actually get started on something and to realize that they actually can make a difference despite all the self-doubt and despite the fact that they feel so small that they can't make a difference. So I don't know. I like them all.
Now, Get Off the Bench started as a book.
Yeah, it did.
And then it evolved into a podcast. So, when I hear that as somebody who's just a sports nut and everything, it makes me think, don't stay on the bench and ride the pine, get in the game and try to do something. So what does the book talk about? How do you get people off the bench and into the game?
So it started off as, all the other things that I've done. I would talk at conferences around the world, and I was talking at one, going to be talking at one, and the guy says, can you do a workshop? And I'm like, yeah, what for? Help people to start projects. And I'm like, oh, geez, I don't know anything about that. I don't know. This is the self-doubt. Maybe we'll talk about challenges soon, but self-doubt kicks in for everybody and imposter syndrome. Anyway, I ended up doing the workshop. And as I was going through, I was thinking, oh, man, there's not enough time. I need to tell you about this and I need to tell you about that. And so at the end of it, I said, look, there's so much more to tell you. If you give me your email address, and it wasn't one of those plugs to fill my email list up because I'm terrible at that. It was, I'm going to send you a PDF with as much stuff as I can think of to add to this workshop. And as I came home and started typing, I'm like, oh, they need to know about that. Oh, they need to know about that. Oh, man, they need to know about that. And I felt like I was cheating them if I didn't give them all this information. And within 4 weeks, I had the book Get Off the Bench, and it covers, what's your idea? What's your vision? What's your big why? What problem are you solving? What's in the way? Resources, risks, funding, how to break it down, what's your first step. But I'm kind of condensing it way too much, but it just sort of goes through step by step. It's not instructional, but it talks through all of the components of getting a project up and running. So
sure. And when you talk about those different things, to me, what's interesting is you never know what it's going to take or where that idea is going to go if you just sit there and think about it. I think people just get it. You want to implode because you feel you have so much on your plate where you're going, What do I do? Do I do this? Do I do that? So what's a good first step just so you get off the bench and try to do something?
Oh, I just think put one foot in front of the other and get started. But I think, the main concept about the book is and the workshops. So Get Off the Bench is a work, which then led to workshops and then led to the podcast. Podcast is a little different because it's just sharing stories to inspire people to say that they can too. But basically it's about, the whole concept is get it out of your head onto paper and into action, and I think that it's the process of putting something down on paper, brain dumping everything and then sort of organizing it a little bit. As much as as you're writing it down on paper, you're like, oh my God, there's so much stuff. There's so many things I have to do. But once they're on paper, you can say, well, what's an easy thing I can do today? Well, damn it, I can research website builders, or I can get myself an email, or I can start a mailing list, or I can, I can ring somebody and get some information, or I can research that topic. So once it's all written down, you can start to pick little bits and fulfill them. And honestly, it's only doing that one first thing and doing something every day, even if it's just thinking about it for 15 minutes, the ball gets rolling, but it will never get rolling unless you take that first step. It just won't.
Sure. And one of the biggest obstacles I know, because I feel like my whole career, I've always had ideas. And then what keeps those ideas from getting anywhere, at least in my mind, is not having the money to do them. Because you see some of the most successful people aren't using their money to do their ideas. They have ways of raising it or able to convince other people to be part of it. And that's never been a strength of mine, getting money from other people. So if money is a hurdle that you have to overcome, what do you do?
Yeah. In the book, I talk about, investors and crowdfunding and going for grants and all that kind of stuff. Now, I've got One Planet Classrooms, which is a not-for-profit that I started in 2015, and we support people in Africa with water tanks and a sponsorship program and women's empowerment. We bought land, we've rebuilt schools, we put in tons of water tanks and water wells and all that kind of stuff. And every cent, we've never got funding from anywhere. Every single cent has come from Facebook, just people off from Facebook. And it has been, I've got this thing and I really believe in it, demonstrated achievement. So start with the tiniest thing. And I tell people this in my workshops, start with, it can be broken down into a pilot program, or just take one of the bits and somehow get enough money just for a tiny bit of it and prove it, prove. Like, for example, a woman wanted to do a domestic violence rescue centre, it's where women can come and stay, but it's going to cost millions. And how do you prove that? So I said, well, find a little space in your town, like a back room of a church or somewhere that's not being used, or that you can rent for $20 a week or something. Start putting on coffees. And this is before COVID. I mean, COVID has definitely, put a dent in all this kind of stuff. Start getting people in, and then start, taking note of your numbers, make some measurement. When I started, I had 3 women come in, and now I've got 20, and they're telling me that their biggest issue is this and it's that, and how it's helped people is this and that, so that you've actually got this whole story to tell when you go for funding. Hey, this is really working. And if I had funding, I would actually be able to do the next step and the next step. So sometimes I think we go for our big grand plan, which is going to cost millions. And it's not always possible to get there in the first instance. So I believe in demonstrated achievement. For me, I put a couple of things on Facebook when I started One Planet Classrooms. Hey, look what I just did. This only cost me $50, and this woman's got a sewing machine. And anyone else want to help? And someone else says, yeah, I'll give $50. And next thing, we got 2 sewing machines. And it didn't start with sewing machines, but I can't remember what it started with. But
no,
the
I get
point
the idea,
is,
yeah.
Yeah, and before long, everybody's like seeing these photos, and they're like, oh, I want to do that, because everybody wants to help. Everybody has, well, I'm going to say everybody, but I'm a bit of a rainbows and unicorns person. I just like to think everyone's good, even if they're not. People want to help. People want to be altruistic, and often they can't see, well, hey, how can I get to a village in Africa? I see the poverty in Africa. I don't know how to do that. But when somebody provides them a conduit, so it's kind of like, well, I've got connection with a village in Africa. If you give me $20, I'll get food for someone. Oh, wow, yes, please. And that way they feel fantastic. And you take a photo, you get a photo sent back. I don't know. Like, I think you can start small and get proof that it's working and build from there. I really,
Yep.
And by the way,
that sounds wonderful.
I just want to say that I've started all of my projects that are all successful with $0. Zero. It might have been $40 of my own money, that sort of thing. So, it can happen.
Well, I think that says a lot about you, because I'm ready to send you money and I don't even know what you're doing today. But, a lot of that, like people that I'm friends with since college that I'm friends with on Facebook probably just roll their eyes if I'm asking for money. It's finding people that, like the idea and like what you're doing. And you're right. If you don't do anything, nothing's going to happen. We always tell filmmakers, just go out and start shooting something, start telling your story, see how it falls together. But if you just sit in a room and go, I have this obstacle, I have this obstacle, you're going to end up getting nothing done.
Absolutely. And I think it's too, if you're asking, I have a lot of trouble asking for money for myself, but when I'm asking money for other people, I can't help but be enthusiastic, and people they do get caught up in that. And I'm not doing it to play on people. I can't help myself. I can't help but get excited about helping other people.
Now, you did a project, or you have a book called Magnificent Kids.
Yep.
Tell me about that.
So it really started, I guess. I was teaching. Oh, look, I was living the rock star life. Everything was all about Kerryn. Don't worry about that. Nobody else. My sister got cancer, and that sort of turned my world upside down. She was only 29, and I sort of, it really rocked me. Suddenly the world wasn't about me. I spent 5 years trying to save her, and I failed. And because I'm the oldest in the family, I saw that as a failure. So I kind of just looked for, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I quit my job, everything else. Anyway, long story short, I ended up doing a disability course so that I could work with people with disabilities, because it was just, I thought life's too short. It's something I've always wanted to do. Long story short, again, I ended up teaching it. And so I was teaching people to work in disability. I became an autism and behavior specialist, and people were saying to me all the time, fix these kids, fix these kids. I thought, Jesus, nothing wrong with their kids. It's a system that they're working within. And I decided, no, I'm going to write a book. And this book is not about kids with autism or behaviours or anything like that. But I just decided that we need to celebrate the strengths in kids, because adults are very fixed in their ways. When you start talking climate change or anything like that to adults, they're kind of like, yeah, nah, it'll be good. I'll be gone in 20 years. I don't really care about that. Now, the kids have got a much better grasp. So it's about 23, I call them superheroes around the world, that have started world-changing projects. And that was in 2014. Some of them are young adults now, but dead set. They were changing the world. Some of them were talking with governments in Vietnam when they were 7 and 8 years old, and protesting when they were 10 years old. And anyway, I didn't write that till I was 50, and that was the biggest kick in the bum I've ever got in my life. And I thought, if these kids are doing this and they're that young, I'm 50, I've got to get moving. So, and I have moved since then.
Stories like that are inspiring. They also, for people who have been doing this for a long time, they kind of drive you nuts, because like I'll make a video and put it on for marketing purposes, and maybe 20 people will see it. Then I see some pimply faced kid lip sync to a song. He gets 1 million people watching it, and he's on Good Morning America the next day. Yeah. And it's that there's no rhyme or reason to it. It makes me want to pull my hair out and scream, because I don't know what I would have to do to get that many people to see something. But kids have a way of doing things that grown-ups can't do, don't they?
They do. Yep. They don't have all the filters that tell us I can't do that. Unless they've got crappy parents telling them you can't do it. Don't give up, don't do that. But kids don't see the same. They don't see the same barriers as we do. They don't have the same resistance as we do. They just think anything's possible and they go for it. Generally speaking, I'm a real generalist. So now listen, for any of your listeners, if they think that's not true of everyone, no, of course it's not, because I'm a generalist. I just love to think in rainbows and unicorns.
But that's a good thing. I mean, I wish I was more like that. I've got to admit, having been in television news, I'm a lot more cynical than that. I know a lot of people don't return my calls, but if a 10-year-old kid called the president might just call him or her back. And there's just a different level of, as I have a daughter who's in college that does broadcasting. And I said, you can call just about anybody and try to get an interview. You're a college student. They're going to love that. They're going to want to help you. When I do it, it has a different, ring to it, where it's like, okay, what's the angle? What are they trying to sell me? What are they after? And kids are a little more pure about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But we've also had those people that have ruined it for us, the people that are spamming all the time. And it's kind of like a genuine person tries to get through, and it's kind of like, nah, I've had enough of that. But
I know. So I actually feel bad for any salespeople that try to call me now, because I just know everybody's trying to screw me, and they're just trying to, through that Apple and USA Insurance, they're all calling me, telling me that there's a problem when I don't even do business with some of them. And there's unfortunately there's people that fall for that stuff.
Yeah, that's going on all around the world. I get maybe 20 texts a day with that sort of stuff and emails and
No, I don't like to answer my phone anymore. Now, I saw
no.
Girls with Hammers. When I first saw that, I got a little afraid. And then I thought of the brilliance of that because of what
Yeah.
it's about. Tell us about it.
So it's we don't do woodwork. Everybody thinks that, but it's metaphorical. It's, smashing down the stereotypes, building stronger women, that kind of thing. And I started that off because I thought, all the girls, like let's say 15-year-old girls, are sexualizing themselves and they're learning to be submissive and that. And I thought, no way, they're got to know they can ride motorbikes and they can be mechanics and they can do whatever the hell they want. So I started at thinking that. Well, I started it by accident. Everything I've started has been by accident. I was at a International Women's Day coaching on a table, and there was a card. I'll read it. I will launch a purposeful female-focused initiative. So I got up on stage in front of 300 women and said, yes, this is what I'm going to do. And they're all cheering. And I got down off stage and thought, oh, damn, now I've really got to do it. Which is everything about me is like, oh, damn, why did I do that? But, and then I thought, well, I've been pondering on Girls with Hammers for a while. And I thought, no, now's the time to start. My partner said, you better start it. I went to a couple of schools and the girls were kind of like, nah, no thanks. You're an old fart and we'll keep doing the things that we love doing. We put on a conference anyway, thinking that we might get some school kids. No, it wasn't. It was all women, 45 to 65, basically. And they just wanted a day out and they just wanted connection and they wanted to drop the world for a day, and just and feel that it was about them. And so now we do conferences and women say that it's the best conference they've ever been to in their life. It's just fantastic. And in the future, when COVID allows, we're going to be doing retreats. So for personal growth retreats and also for contribution retreats. So going to Cambodia, building toilets for girls and that sort of stuff. So I can't wait for COVID to just rack off so we can get some amazing stuff happening.
Now, there seems to be a theme with everything you do, helping people, empowering people, getting people to do something. Have you always been this positive? Because like I say, I'm positive about certain things, but I'm also very cynical and I would say somewhat jaded. You seem a lot more I would say real, but things that you really believe in that you've been very, very good at getting them done. Have you always been like that?
Yeah, I've always been, and nothing's going to get in my way. And that doesn't mean I don't encounter self-doubt and imposter syndrome. I do all the time. But I think that, I was talking to somebody on a Zoom the other day and she said, you haven't stopped smiling for over an hour and a half. And I look back and I think, yeah, that's just who I am. And I've always smiled. I've always thought, oh, yeah, I can do it, and I've always seen I don't know, even when things are really terrible, I find the good, and it doesn't mean I don't find the bad as well, but I like to make light of stuff, and I think that's my personality type. But I can't help it. I can't help but feel the joy. I can't.
Well, thank you for not helping it, because I think it makes a huge difference. And with obviously COVID has screwed up a lot of things and set things back. So now you're dealing with people online more probably than we would all like. When you started your podcast, what was the build like for that? I mean, for me, it's like looking up a mountain and going, there's 5 million people with a podcast. How do you find an audience and then get that audience to keep coming back and listening to you? Is there any secret you can toss my way?
I used to do a podcast with a young boy from Tasmania, and I was flying over there to do it. It just didn't work. It was just logistics were too hard. And I thought one day I'm going to do my own. So I did in a couple of years. But at the end of, I was going to launch it for the very start of 2020. But in 2 weeks prior to that, my sister had a cardiac arrest. And it was kind of like she survived. I don't know how she survived. No brain damage. I don't know how she pulled through. But anyway, then I was kind of like, no, well, I can't really focus on a podcast. I've really got to focus on family for a bit. And then we had the bushfires in East Gippsland, where more than 1 billion animals were killed. And it broke me. It actually knocked me off my perch. So that was one thing that knocked me off my perch. And I thought, well, I can't start it now. And I applied for animal rescue places and they didn't take me. So I felt like that was a rejection. I felt like I felt hopeless, helpless, and I don't know. And then COVID hit and that was another kick in the guts. And then I just thought, no, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to let all these things stop me, because if I feel hopeless and helpless, there are going to be people out there who feel like they can't do something. And I need to get on the airwaves, and I need to inspire people that, maybe I can't go save animals, but maybe someone else will because of my podcast. So I just put it out there. And to be honest, I don't, the marketing, I hardly do anything. I do a snippet and I put it up and I say, hey, this is fantastic. I don't keep metrics. I probably should. People tell me I'm crazy. I do it because I have a genuine desire to empower people, inspire people to believe that they can. And if I change one person's life and they do something because they've heard me say they can, then that person will go out and impact however many people, maybe 1, maybe 10, maybe 1 million, but if I'm not doing that and if I'm not inspiring and empowering, they're definitely, well, I'm not going to say they're definitely not going to do it, but that's one extra thing that's going to give them that push off the bench.
Sure.
So,
oh, absolutely. And when I say my background was television news, we were so consumed with ratings, and television still is, where they meter everybody that's listening or watching, and they can tell you you're this or you're that based on who's watching and what that audience is. And with a podcast like yours, I mean, it's just probably getting it out there. People just feel your enthusiasm and they go, I want to listen to what she has to say, because it sounds like a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. But I think on it, I'm always genuine. I'm not trying to be marketing. I'm not trying to be promoting. I'm just really cheering for the person that's on there. And don't worry, I go down rabbit burrows. I go on about people hurting animals, and and then I have to pull myself back, say, oh, all right, we're going down a rabbit burrow. Let's come back. But I just want to share my truth, and it's people.
I've worked with a lot of people. I've worked with a lot of people that are real good at promoting themselves, and when they introduce themselves to you, they'll give you their resume and in how they talk. I've never been one to really be able to do that. So you kind of have to hit them other ways. You have to show them that you have a passion for what you do, and it comes through. I know when I was a guest of yours, that podcast hasn't come out yet, but your style just made me feel like, hey, I'm actually talking to somebody who's listening, and this is important. That really helps. Yeah.
I think that's critical. And it's not just on the podcast, it's critical in life. When you're talking with someone, you invest in that moment, and it doesn't cost you anything. It really, I don't know, people need to feel seen and feel heard, feel valued. We would have far less depression and suicide and all sorts of things if people felt like somebody saw them. We really would.
Yeah, that's a problem with a lot of kids. That's what I love about your superhero project, with the kids and the Magnificent Kids. I did a film years ago where I interviewed kids who had tried to commit suicide. And God, if you talk about something that just tears you apart, because you're thinking this precious young life felt so bad about where they were in the world that they were going to end their life. And so to hear kids that are inspirational and have other kids hopefully see that, that's one of those things that really could feed on itself and make a difference.
Yeah. And that was my hope, that kids would read it, parents would read it, and teachers would read it, and they would start focusing on what's good about that kid. And school's terrible. School only measures one linear set of metrics, but there are kids in there that are brilliant at art, brilliant at communication, brilliant at, music, and brilliant at other things that have got, it's a medium to get to people, to make people feel great and to make them feel great. And we've got to promote that. We have to focus on what they're good at and what they love. We do. Really
In a
do.
lot of those instances where they don't do well, do you think it's fair to blame the parents? I mean, my film License to Parent talked about just there's a lot of people that probably shouldn't be parents that are. There's a lot of people that try really hard, but maybe they're doing the wrong things. We don't give enough support for parents.
Mm. I don't know. I don't know if I want to blame anybody in particular. I think our system, worldwide, like there are some countries that are doing it fantastic. I think Iceland don't send kids to school till they're 8 and they only go for a few hours a day. And they've got a really great, I think it's Iceland or Greenland, but they've got hardly any divorces. Like they've really built on relationships. And I think that our system sucks. It's about competition. It's about you're no good. If you didn't get an A, you're no good. And you're just made to feel like crap. And if you're made to feel like crap, you're not going to try about anything. You're going to hurt. You're going to be in pain. You're going to take it out on other people. You become a parent. You take out your pain on your kids. And I just think, man, if we could have a system in the world where we allowed people to flourish according to their strengths, I don't think we would have as many bad parents, because I think that you, as a parent, you only do as good as you know how to do, or it comes from your terrible, terrible feeling of low self-esteem, and you just want to take it out on other people and hurt. I'm not saying there's not bad people. I know there's some really bad people who hurt kids, but yeah, I just think to be hurting kids or to not be, you've got to be feeling crappy yourself. There's got to be something in there that's just, I don't like me very much. And I don't know, maybe I'm doing rainbows and unicorns again, but it's
Well, it's okay to do that when it involves kids, because they're tough. And I read this article the other day just about things we say to our kids that we're not even aware of, how they hear it. And I know I'm guilty of that a lot, because sometimes kids will do things to drive you crazy and they'll test you, and it's not always easy to have the right response for it. When I see people that appear to have perfect kids, I always go, gosh, how'd they get so lucky? And then I'm going, well, maybe they have better parents. Maybe they're better parents. I don't know.
No, maybe the kids are just not telling the truth, because I know we've got 2 teenagers and they're my step kids, so they're not mine. And, I'm not perfect either, because, I've come from, living on my own, and I had everything the way I wanted to, and then one of our girls, she's so freaking noisy. She gets in the kitchen, she drops things and bangs things, and I'm like, stop it, so I'm not perfect either. And it's, but then they've got friends that everyone says, oh, they're so perfect. And then we find out they're sneaking out at night, and all sorts of stuff. So I don't know about these perfect kids. I don't think any kid's perfect, but I think it's
parenting is the toughest job in the world. I would
think. It is.
Easily.
And step parenting is tougher.
It is, because you're automatically in a tough position there, where they're not going to look at you the same way. And it's a respect that has to be earned over time. I know friends of mine that had step parents growing up say often until they were grown-ups, they didn't appreciate what they put that parent through and how great they really were for them. And they didn't appreciate it as a youngster.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
So you'll get appreciated. It'll come back to you.
Yeah, they already do. They already do, because I've put them through a few tough times. But I think I can't wait till they're adults and they say, God, you're awesome, Kerryn.
Because that's when you can start having more fun with them, in terms of, like, I know some people that want to be friends with their kids, and it's like, you're not their friend. You can't be their friend, because you have to do tough things and make tough decisions. But once your kids are older, I have sons and a daughter that are in their 20s, and we can have a different kind of relationship now, where it's not the authoritarian versus the child. It's grown up to grown up. Yeah.
I think our role as parents is to create, to grow, develop, whatever, functional adults, because at the end of the day, I don't mean take away their childhood. That's not what I mean, but you have fun while they're kids. But at the end of the day, they're going to be adults. And do you want them to be defaulting back to things that we, encouraged that are not going to help them when they're adults? Like, I'm not going to school today because I feel sick. Okay, stay home. Well, that's not going to translate in the workplace at all. That's not going to work. So it's kind of a bit of tough love. Well, maybe go to school, see how you feel, and then we'll work it out.
Well, I've wasted a lot of good lectures and speeches. I'm hoping to come back around because I think they've gone in one ear and out the other, if even that. So if because you've done so many things that literally, if you want to talk about moving the world, you certainly have a list of them. What's the advice you have for somebody out there? We've kind of touched on it, but if you had to dumb it down for people, what would you say is the key to getting out there and moving the world?
Look, I would say if you're really passionate about something, if something keeps coming up for you, you keep saying, oh, one day I'd love to, or there's an issue that really pulls at your heart in a good way or a bad way, just do something. Start talking about it. Even if it's just start talking about it and say, I'd love to do something, or do something small. I don't know, grab backpacks and fill them up for homeless kids if that's your thing. Oh, these poor kids in foster care, they're being moved from home to home. They don't even have a teddy. Well, start something that provides all the kids with teddies. You want to do something with climate change, just start planting some lavender, get some bees, or do you know what I mean? Like, you can do so much. And the problem is everyone wants to save the world. Okay, here I go again, everyone, not everyone, but we want to save the world. And we do this whole, I feel defeated because I'm only one person. I'm too small. I can't make a difference. But I always keep saying to people, no, focus on your piece of the jigsaw puzzle. You only need to focus on your bit and get your bit right. And I don't mean perfect, just right. Just put some gusto into it, put your piece in. And if we all put in our piece, we're going to have a much better world. But at the end of the day, I say get started. And I don't care, even if it's just writing it down on a bit of paper and putting it on your wall, get started.
And then what would you do? How do you gauge success? You just take it in baby steps. You can't say I didn't do everything. You kind of have to focus on what you've done and focus on what's good about that, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. I think, one of the things is we talk about confidence. I don't have the confidence to do it, and when I get the confidence, I'm going to do it. But every little success you have builds confidence. I was successful. Oh, I did that. I made that phone call. I always talk about 20 seconds of courage. And I think that courage comes before confidence. Imagine what you can do with 20 seconds of courage. Oh, I really need to ring that person. I'm so damn scared. Damn it. I'm going to dial that number and do it. 20 seconds. And you're talking to them. After you've done that, the success is not in whether they agreed or not. The success is, I got over that line. I got over that hurdle. And now I'm more confident to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And, that just builds and builds and builds. And before you know it, you've got this whole series of successes. And successes, like I said, they're not about whether you win or lose. Success is about, did I do that thing? And did I beat my own benchmark? Did I get over that line that was beating me? And one thing on that, I just want to talk about failure is I think failure is fantastic, and we need to become friends with it, because failure is feedback and rejection is redirection. And if we can keep a focus on those two things, we're set. And every no is one step closer to a yes. I know, listen to me, I've got this whole plethora of little sayings. I absolutely love them.
Yeah, I have a much harder time taking no than you do. Interestingly, when you're evaluating something too, I had a boss tell me years ago, focus on the things that are positive first. Don't come out of the box going, oh, I did this wrong, I did that wrong, this was bad, because then that kind of brings the whole idea down. But if you can focus on, hey, this was really good. And then after you've talked about the things you did well, then you can analyze the things you can do better, but not to highlight them as failures.
No, absolutely. And a very quick story. When I started One Planet Classrooms, before I said sewing machines, I couldn't even remember, but I actually started that as a Skype project. And I wanted to help people in Africa, classrooms in Africa, Skype with classrooms in Australia. I completely buggered it up. It was just an absolute disaster trying to get laptops to Uganda. And secondly, the kids in Africa were in bed when the kids in Australia were in school. So it was never going to work. Thirdly, I sent laptops to a country where 95% of them don't even have power. So it was a complete disaster, but I did it anyway. But I did, and as I realized this isn't going to work, I'd learned learned from talking to all the school teachers that all these kids were dying from drinking dirty water, and girls were being sexually assaulted, going to fetch the water. And so my choice was, I can walk away with my tail between my legs and say, I failed. I'm absolutely crap at this. I should never set up another not-for-profit again because I'm terrible. Or I can say, you know what, girls are being assaulted, kids are dying. I've already got a foot in the door over there. I'm already talking to people. Why don't I put water tanks in? And then I started doing that, and thousands of lives have been changed simply because I failed. So yeah, I think failure is awesome. It's amazing.
That's a great story. How can people get a hold of you? If somebody wants to hear your podcast or just see your website, what's the best way people can reach out to you?
Well, I think the very first spot and best spot is KerrynVaughan.com. So KerrynVaughan.com. And I'm also on Instagram under Get Off the Bench, and LinkedIn, Kerryn Vaughan, and Facebook, Get Off the Bench. So I would love for people to connect. Absolutely love it.
You don't do TikToks, do you?
No, I don't do TikTok. No, I've done
Snapchat.
a couple of stupid things, and I get thousands of likes, but I nearly kill myself doing it. So I try to stay off there.
Yeah, my kids do that stuff, and it just drives me nuts. The things they put on Snapchat and TikTok just want to make me pull my hair out, literally.
No, I'm not on there, so don't worry.
Okay, well, I was going to say, if you were, you probably are successful at it, and you probably find a way to master that. But hey, Kerryn, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for having me on your podcast. And, thank you for doing everything that you do to move the world. I mean, you really are an impressive person.
My absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for having me. It's just been wonderful talking to you. Wonderful.
I appreciate it. So, what a great guest. What an inspirational story. Check out Kerryn's website, follow her, listen to her podcast. I'm now going to become a regular listener of her podcast, especially when my episode comes on. But it's so inspirational to think about that if we get off our tails and just focus and try to do something, who knows? You're going to end up moving the world. Just even a fraction of what Kerryn does, you'll find yourself being successful. That's going to do it for us this time. We'll see you next time around.